that bad in this state, okay, the number of kids who were, not eating properly was high enough that they felt the need that they had to manage it this far. And they even have now, lots of these schools are open until 6 or 7 at night. So the kids are there all day. The school's now a babysitter. And they might as well let the kids sleep in the school.
Here's the crux of that issue, okay? So say a couple has one kid, abides by the voucher program. They are only able to afford the kid prior to the kid enrolling in a school, okay? Once the non-public school costs kick in, this couple cannot continue raising their kid by themselves. Do you take a 6-year-old and remove a 6-year-old from his parents, put him in an orphanage because the kid only starts being too expensive once the kid is old enough to enroll in public school?
Well, that's I'm just saying that I don't know how draconian you get about these rules, right? Because we're so close to creating the unsustainable negative population decline, right? I mean, there's
Can I get a yes or no? Can I get a yes or no?
Well, a yes or no to what? Oh, do we shoot the kid? Do we kill the kids that are 7 years old? Yes or no? I mean, this is a stupid... Well, I'm just saying, I'm trying to sit there and say, give me a reasonable chance to qualify my answer, okay? And I'm sitting here telling you, the answer is yes, okay, if there's still increased population in America. So if population in America is still increasing, then the answer is yes. If population's declining, the answer is no.
Okay, so then it's not about blackmailing society for the collectivized costs. It's about whether the population...
Yes, it is, but it's a again, you keep denying me the right to be at least pragmatic. What's the point of having any policy if it's not practical? So again, what's the point of me telling you that I personally, okay, would run the kid over? Okay, there. Does that solve the problem? Does it an answer? Is that a viable political strategy? Let's run a platform, okay, where we shoot children because their parents are poor. Let's just shoot the whole fucking family. I wouldn't care, to tell you frankly. Okay, I have such contempt for poor people who have kids. I have absolutely no ethical problem personally with every fucking poor person who has a kid being shot in the fucking head. It wouldn't bother me a bit. I have no sympathy for them. I have no use for them. I think they're a blight on civilization. Can I make that any clearer? They're a blight. They're cruel, stupid, evil bastards. And I wouldn't give a shit if they all dropped fucking dead. There. Now, is that a viable political philosophy? No.
And I understand, but you're going on a tangent.
No, I'm not. You demanded it. You keep telling me I have to say it your way. Fuck you, I don't. Well, I can say it.
I want to give you my statement, okay, and then we can move on. I'd rather take the evils of blackmailing, breeders blackmailing society. I'd rather take that, and that's going to be the lesser of evils in my view, when compared to a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old being removed from their parents and being emotionally devastated by that loss of the familial connection.
And I find it laughable that if the familial connection is that incompetent, that it can't provide for these minimums, that somehow that kid isn't going to be a lot better off than being in a family that's likely got all kinds of alcoholism or some other crisis or some other bullshit. Okay? Failure, as you pointed out before, failure isn't an accident. It's often an act of deliberate behavior, and there's every likelihood that these people who can't take care of these minimums are not good influences on their children. That's why there is an 80% dropout rate in Chicago, or 85%, is because they're not good role models. They're toxic waste.
How about we just ask the kid, is this too hostile of an environment?
Exactly, that would be good. I'm good with that. I'm good with that.
Then perfect, okay, because I would not want a kid who loves his parents, and I wish I could just sit here and say that most kids don't. That would be ideal, because ideologically, yeah, then it makes everything so easy. But again, the kid's emotional trauma should be...
Well, as I qualified what I said in my video, I'm saying that even rich people's kids should be able to go to the orphanage. If you're pissed off at your parents for any reason whatsoever, you should be allowed to go to the orphanage.
Well, at least, yeah, as long as we give the kid the option, that's something I can live with. Now, you said the immortality pill endorsement I wrote about would not work because of the biosphere conflict, but I have already pointed out in previous sections, as well as in our last call, that the event chains, okay, so let's go event chain ABC, going all the way down to event chain XYZ, okay, now that would not be tolerated by me, even if it implicates just one non-consenting third party. So let's say letter P amid the alphabet is the non-consenting third party. Okay, so the immortality pill scenario was offered in the framework of an implied understanding that we are already in a Star Trek type future where we would not have to drag the biosphere down with us. So in that respect, if you say, okay, they can take the pills and increase their longevity and suffer if they so please, my single point is that if you say that's the case, then you are not a negative utilitarian in exclusivity. You are a preference utilitarian in some respects.
Well, I don't see the... I mean, I guess I'll make the argument that I'm just not willing to waste time on people that belligerent. So I would say if the belligerence is theirs alone and confined to their welfare alone, then it's okay. But I mean, again, I'm going to argue to you that if I was talking about smallpox, okay, you'd say make sure that you wouldn't trust Bubba Joe, right? You wouldn't give a bottle of smallpox to Bubba and say, okay, Bubba, you're gonna make sure this jar doesn't get broken now, right, Bubba? And I'm not gonna give a bunch of Bubbas license to go fuck me in the end, right? They sign a contract that they're not gonna procreate. They go on the Enterprise and then they start leaving their seed all over the universe. So I'm going to have one hell of a guarantee that this toxic waste isn't going to get loose before I'm going to be comfortable saying it's okay. So I'm just explaining why, even if you tell me I'm giving you this great thought experiment where it's all worked out and it's a guarantee they're not going to reproduce, well, I'm still going to be awful apprehensive because I'm so paranoid of this thing getting loose that I can't even look at that freedom as not being a threat. Just them having the capacity is a threat.
But theoretically, let's invoke a neat little crystal ball and say it doesn't end up being a threat to anyone other than themselves.
That's what I'm saying. I'm conceding your argument in that circumstance. I'm just saying that I can't emotionally find much comfort with that because it's not intuitive. But I'm saying if you give me absolute guarantees that the only thing they'll ever torture is their own brain, fine. Let them go torture their own brain. Okay,
so then there's a difference between provisional extinctionism and unconditional extinctionism. And if you're...
No, there's a difference of being pragmatic, again, and making a concession to political expediency. I mean, what do you want me to say? Give me in the thought experiment the opportunity to shoot them all in the head without going to jail, and I'll shoot them all in the head. I mean, I'm not respecting what they're doing for any other reason than you're forcing me to. If it's my preference, they're dead, okay? I don't let them loose.
You're cutting me off too much and going on tangents.
Well, it's not a tangent, but I'm just trying to explain. You're telling me what I'm saying, and I'm trying to say that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying I want them free. I'm not saying I want them free. I'm just saying Anti-Bullshit Man is insisting that they have rights, and I'm saying, okay, give them their fucking rights. But I would prefer just to shoot them.
Now, let's get into non-consequentialist arguments for or against natalism versus consequentialist arguments. Let me give you an analogy. This was something I do believe I invoked in the section on extinction. Now, let's take arranged marriages. Now, I'm pretty sure that we would both not take issue with arranged marriages on consequentialist grounds had every single couple involved been compatible and had every single couple genuinely enjoyed their spouse over all other potential spouses, right? So we can still have non-consequentialist issues with arranged marriage just because theoretically it's retarded to have people born to, predestined to marry based on their family's choice. Okay, so intellectually we can say it's stupid, but just on strict consequentialist grounds, if we know that every single couple is actually going to be perfectly compatible, then we would not take issue with arranged marriages on consequential grounds. And I'm going to say that the same thing can be done with natalism. So if the familial compatibility is there, and if the child likes the parent, and if the child does not regret having been born, we can still have an issue with natalism on non-consequentialist grounds, but strictly consequentially, if they don't have a problem with who raises them, nor do they have a problem with their own lives, it's inane to make consequentialist arguments against natalism, provided that assurance. I understand in reality that assurance does not exist, and even one child regretting their birth is too much, as far as I'm concerned, too high a price. Or even one child having contempt.
Well, what if the way they found contentment was the parents fed them lead paint and the kid was 30 points were knocked off his IQ, and that's the reason why the kid became content.
Obviously, that would not apply. That would not apply.
Well, I mean, it's not a full retard. He's just not smart enough to realize he's being totally game. So he's not smart enough to get the game metaphor, but he's not a retard.
Paint is a non-starter. It's malpractice. It's poor parenting. Nobody's going to say that that's good parenting. So it's just an immediate non-starter. That's abuse. That's child.
Well, okay. Well, what if a woman goes to a sperm bank and picks, somebody not for their intelligence, but just because they have a super body? So he was a great baseball player, but he had an IQ that was marginal. Is she deliberately creating an imbecile?
Is she deliberately creating an imbecile because she picked somebody of average intelligence?
Well, let's say, I mean, I'm giving him the benefit, but yeah, let's just say he has, yes, average is pretty bad, right? So yeah, he has average intelligence. So she's deliberately creating a child who has average intelligence, and we know that average intelligence means he's probably going to end up believing in angels.
There's no correlative effect between intelligence and content of belief. There's some brilliant.
Well, I think there probably is.
People.
You're not going to get away with that.
Kent Hovind is a brilliant guy who can talk circles around most evolutionists. That does not imply that because he has these.
Well, I know, but neither does that exceptionalism indicate anything. That doesn't indicate that the general theories and general norms have changed any. He's an exceptional aberration. The intelligent religious fuck is an aberration, not a norm, not a that's an improbable event, not a probable event. The probability of being dumb as a stick and religious is the connection between those two things is quite strong.
But overall, there are many intelligent people who have patently false beliefs and many retarded. Well, I don't want to say retarded. Okay, but many people of average intelligence or low intelligence who are mostly aligned with the facts and who don't hold to any sort of.
Well, let me ask for the same benefit I gave you in some of these thought experiments. Let's just accept as the premise that no, there is a clear correlation between phantasmagorical, silly, nonsense beliefs and marginal IQ or median IQ. Anything median and below ends up with a high probability of UFO theory or truther theory or God theory or whatever bullshit theory.
I do not think there's a correlation between intelligence and accurate belief versus lower intelligence and inaccurate beliefs. I think this is a product of idiosyncrasy and people's conditioning. Okay, so I
think that is infinitely disprovable. I think there is proof based on IQs that would demonstrate.
Little things, people's maturation go on to trigger huge causations as to why they end up believing things somewhere down the road. Little things that are wholly detached from the actual intelligence of the person.
But I think there is a huge correlation between grasping subjects like evolution and having a functional grasp of it and the likelihood that any belief in God will be subject to scrutiny and you will likely drop the subject. I mean, I think obviously if you take any sociology classes, learn anything about the history of human civilization, you will find out very quickly that yes, religious stories are just stories. They're not magic. They're made up by men, and it's all bullshit. And I'm just saying that intelligence is corrosive to religion. I'm saying if you let people in Iran have free access to the internet, they're not going to believe in Mohammed anymore.
So why are there so many Christians in the U.S. which has internet?
Because they're raised by imbeciles.
So would the Iranians be if you gave them internet, or whatever country you use.
Well, I'm just saying they don't have internet here either. The poor don't use the internet as an informational tool.
But again, it's not a lack of access; it's a lack of choice.
Well, I'm just saying that I'm giving the Iranians the benefit of the doubt in the sense that if they did have free access, that they would use it more responsibly than silly Americans who are crude, culturally retarded in many ways. So I'm just saying that I think Iranian culture is probably not quite as culturally retarded as even America. Nothing's as culturally retarded as America.
That's, as far as I'm concerned, a bold statement.
I know it's bold, but I'm just saying it's the most trivial.
Preposterously inane customs and mores throughout Europe.
Well, I'm not saying there aren't mores and inane. I'm just saying that America, I think, is structurally has almost a despise of intelligence, a despise of anything with any character or beauty. It loves fart humor. America is a dirty, stinking pig, culturally.
But they're emulated more culturally than any other
Exactly,
nation.
And you think Japan, you think any of those other cultures are better off for it? No, they recognize the blight.
I'm just saying, you're giving these other people the benefit of the doubt. Look at how many other cultures emulate.
I know. Well, they don't emulate it on purpose.
There's such a thing as Serbian Idol. They've taken American Idol and they've globalized it. Now, every little country throughout Europe, not everyone, but a lot of them, okay, they have their own adaptation of American Idol. So I'm just saying, I think you give other cultures more than...
Well, I'm not saying they are indestructible. I'm just saying that they had more integrity before they became American. I'm just saying that there was more class and dignity and grace before, like, even the Soviet Union swallowed the capitalist pill.
Okay, so again, going back to let's just look at arranged marriages. Had all those couples been compatible ideologically, would you argue against those unions on consequentialist grounds? Yes or no?
See, again, here you go with these choices. I'm gonna contextualize my answer based on the fact that regular unarranged marriages fail, okay, at a horrific 40% rate, and so the alternative doesn't look too good. But obviously, I don't see any point in forcing a marriage. Okay, so that's I mean, you know, but arranged, suggested arrangements, maybe, I don't know, but yes, no, I'm not for arranged marriage. I'm not for marriage.
Neither am I. Neither are most Westerners. But the point is, and I think this overlaps to natalism in a neat sort of way, is that should that compatibility be there between the people who will be living under the same roof, if we are assured the compatibility, then we should only make non-consequentialist arguments against it, as opposed to ones...
Well, that again is if you think you're saying it's a harmless arranged marriage because you're going by this simple standard of he didn't kill her, or they both said they're happy. How do you know they would have been happier with somebody else? You know, their confirmation of their relationship might be part of the very culture that shoved them together in the first place. It might be more about just saving face for the fact that they have this tradition and they want to defend the tradition. So
let's say it's the best of all worlds and we know it, right?
Well, I know, but you're not going to be able to do that with natalism because, again, I'm going to argue that this philosophical perception is a lot different than, you know, it's like somebody being raised vegetarian and raised to eat meat. Okay, if you never know the addiction, you can't, you know, you're not going to sit there and migrate by some sort of force to eating meat. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's likely not going to happen in if you're not initiated into the behavior. So if you're not turned into a food pervert, you're not likely to become one. And so natalism is a lot the same way, is that I'm saying that the idea of not recognizing the huge the God playing responsibility of producing children is something indoctrinated into kids. It's not something with the native perception or the rational perception. It's the irrational learned perception of these negligent, reckless lunatics that get into these roles as role models. And they're reckless lunatics.
Well, let's move on. Now, I'm going to give you a statement. Let me know if you think that it's in some way inaccurate. Okay, so meaning. Meaning cannot be pursued. Meaning can only be constructed. You tell me if there's anything wrong with that statement. Meaning cannot be pursued. Meaning can only be constructed.
I guess it's backwards, I guess. I don't, I would argue maybe. I don't know what constructed, I guess constructed is a tricky word. Constructed out of what? Pieces of real materials, or constructed out of fantasy? So, I mean, I don't know which one.
Notions in the head. Notions in the head.
Yeah, well, again, I'm saying that why you go with the word meaning? Meaning is a value-laced word, so why not go to the origin, go to the word value? Meaning only means something if value means something. If value doesn't mean anything, then meaning doesn't mean anything.
Well, I'm saying all meaning / value, if you want to inject it, is constructed, is perceptual.
And I'm saying quite clearly that the mechanism that produces value is experiential. Somebody has an experience. The experience has a qualitative, describable quality. It has a property. It has a property that can be observed and qualified, and it has nothing to do with whether or not you witness it or not. It is the tree falls, the sound is made.
When I say it's perceptual, I don't mean the third-party witness is perceiving it. I mean the individual who is having these experiences is perceiving it. So when I say it's
But I know, but they're not the one that give it meaning. It's given meaning by the mere fact that it happens. If something breaks my leg right now, I'm going to be so distracted by the pain that I'm not going to be sitting here saying, I'm in pain, I'm having a meaningful, painful experience. I'm not going to be acknowledging the meaning of the pain. I'm just going to be experiencing the pain. All right? So the value component is going to exist. I'm not going to have an opinion about it. The value is going to be in the experience, in and of itself. It doesn't need me to survive it. It doesn't need me to exist before it. None of that matters. All that matters is it happening while it happened. It was endured and it was experienced. That makes it real.
In other words, you want to say that ethics are not about oughts. They are about experiences.
Well, obviously ethics is about oughts, but they're oughts based on what's the cumulative effect on experience. If it creates less bad experience, then it's a good do it ought. And if it's going to create more negative experience, then it's a bad don't do it ought.
But see, the fact that there is a catch ought to it goes back to the fact that it is perceptual. So the moment
it's deduced. Again.
You've been talking for 70% of the time. Okay, so you have. So I'm just saying, the moment you interlace ontological realism with moral realism, as you insist on doing, you have to believe that there is no difference between the falsity that 2 + 2 = 5 and the falsity that, for example, average well-being trumps total well-being. And the moment we get into the meticulous aspects of it, like the 100 harm units being distributed among 100 people versus 99 harm units being distributed among one individual, we see just how arbitrary it is, whereas with something like ontological realism, there is no arbitrary aspects to it once you get into the devilish details.
Oh, yeah, there's no arbitrariness to it except for the fact that it's so vague and undependent on outcomes that you could basically end up with a nuclear war and everybody's blown up and horribly burned to death slowly based on some good intention. Where logically it could have been perfectly understood that you never take that chance. And so it doesn't have built into it any recognition that you have to still deal with the model. The idea is to model what takes place. We don't have perfect weather models, but they're pretty good. I mean, the assholes got it pretty right here today. You know, it snowed about 2 to 4 inches worth, so they nailed it pretty close.
And snow exists without us perceiving it.
Well, yeah, and I'm saying that when a rabbit's suffering, it's suffering whether I put any whether I write it in my book or not. It's still an event that took place.
I would never contest, nor have I ever contested, that it is an event that would not have taken place. But don't blame me and other people who might call themselves pluralists or relativists, which I think is a stupid word.
Well, again, what if...
Hang on. Don't blame us for the fact that ethics are about oughts. And if no one's saying it ought not to have happened, then the ethical implication will not exist. It's not my fault.
Ought is built into the word. You can't have the idea of bad. You can't say the word bad without now inventing the word ought. Harm implies the word ought. I mean, ought not to have harm. Duh. Ought not to have repulsive. Duh.
Any Stoic can just make the same connection with their Stoic values and say that there's an intrinsic ought applied to it. Anyone can play the game.
I'm just saying, what game are you saying I'm playing? I'm just saying if a Stoic comes up with a math that based on what should, that the outcome should have a net productivity, then fine. But that's not what a Stoic is doing. A Stoic is just saying, if I procedurally turn the car on correctly, I don't have to worry about whether I run over a child or not. And that's nonsense.
Let's just say the net effect is truth itself as opposed to harm versus non-harm. I don't want to say pleasure, but I'll just say non-harm, just seeing as how I'm discussing it with you.
I appreciate it.
I'm just saying both claims are unfalsifiable empirically. So we have to grant that they are notional, so we have to grant breathing room in some respects. And that is why I would use value pluralism. You want to call it relativism. I think relativism is a stupid word. I would use pluralism as opposed to strict janitorialism.
Well, it doesn't matter, in my opinion. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that there's this thing called productive and not productive. There's a thing called efficiency and inefficiency. You either are minimally efficient or you are not. And what your intentions are irrelevant. So if you don't cross the finish line first, you didn't win the race.
And your proposal is unfalsifiable.
Well, I mean, unfalsifiable how? I'm saying unless you can falsify the premises, yes, it's unfalsifiable. But I'm just saying that no value equation, no value statement could ever be falsifiable with some sort of material evidence. It can only be falsifiable with a reasonable counter-explanation. And what I'm going to argue is that there is no reasonable counter-explanation if I give you two scenarios and they provide no other way to look at it except that, yes, we ought to not do that, and we ought to do that. There are a million of those. I can give you a million exaggerated circumstances where I exaggerate the positive and negative value, and there is no conceivable way you could ever say that, yes, the ought doesn't exist. The ought is intrinsic and fundamental and can't be rationally countered. There'll be no rational counter argument. You won't be able to make a single statement that makes any sense saying don't do it.
Seeing as how you agree that it's perceptual, whether the witness is perceiving it or the harm subject.
I'm not going to argue this perceptual. No, I don't agree that it's perceptual. I stated it. The value is value is a product of an experience. It is not a perception. I do not need to interpret my fucking broken leg for my broken leg to mean something.
So that you are saying that the statement, the universe does not do ought, is a false statement. I'm saying the universe doesn't do ought.
And I'm saying quite obviously, the very idea that I have value math is automatically saying I do ought. Of course I do. There are negative outcomes and positive outcomes. There is efficiency and inefficiency. There's productivity and destructive. These are things that you cannot possibly have without an ought.
Okay, so oughts are not notional in your view.
Oughts are a definition of the qualitative value equation product. Yes, if you want the product to be maximized towards perfection, you must obey oughts. You must have oughts to get there.
And all I'm going to say is that it is, by its very nature, an unfalsifiable statement if we're going to deal with empiricism.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying unfalsifiable materially. I'm saying it is falsifiable by a piece of logic. You could make a counter argument explaining how negative conscious experiences are not intrinsically bad things. That they are somehow intrinsically, if I make one conscious experiencing entity called Frankenstein's monster, I put him on the moon and I give him a horrific headache, and he has no other function, he just experiences horrific headache, you can't give me a rational reason for that thing to be created.
I cannot, because with me doing such a thing, it does simply, the task does not resonate with me. So I cannot argue that that would be a good idea, because genuinely such a task does not resonate with me, and it screams nothing but negligence and malice.
Well, regardless of what it screams, I'm just saying that it's a circumstance that ought to be corrected for. It's a circumstance that must not just be left alone if there is no compromise of anything's welfare to correct for it, then you correct for it. If correcting for it is in the realm of possibility and economics, it must be done, or else you neglected to take care of a problem. You fell short of your productivity.
Okay, so the end statement is that reality does ought. Reality itself does
value
ought.
Imposes ought, yes. The existence of material or real value, absolute value, imposes oughts.
And this is why this will be the absolute last you and I are ever going to... We're not going to cross this bridge again, because it gets so painfully circular. I can recite your arguments for moral realism verbatim. You can recite my arguments probably for pluralism verbatim, and there's simply no fruitfulness to this. We know each other's positions. We know we can recite each other's positions. There is a fundamental different way of interpreting this issue between us. We do not reject any fact, but it just comes down to how we look at it. I'm saying value cannot impose ought. Oughts are notional. You're saying it's simply an intrinsic value math that is self-generating, self-evolving, and self-asserting. Okay, so to me, this is absolutely useless, and it cannot be anything other than circular. So seeing as how it can be anything other than circular, I'm going to move on.
Okay, well, I'm just going to argue I think that's a silly diagnosis. Obviously, there's always some reason why people disagree. It is deterministic. Logic is linear. Logic is constructed. So obviously, there is some nuance. And if we have the electron microscope and we look at these two things, maybe we can find out why this butterfly flies and why this butterfly doesn't. And what I'm saying is the reason why we disagree, there is a reason. And it may be well worth finding out what that reason is. Because to me... yeah, it is so profoundly obvious to me. It's not like this isn't like us disagreeing about, some subtle variation in color on a car or something, or smoothness or some other. This one is I'm so confident of this one. You know what I mean? I would risk I would go to hell forever.
I understand. Now, I guess we're not done after all, because I'm just going to give an analogy. That train of thought, it's a specious line of reasoning. It resonates with us, but it can also be applied to prove, quote unquote, something like cinema realism. Because let's say that there is an abomination of a film. Let's stack it up next to some of the greatest films of all time, and it would seem preposterous to say that we cannot in any factual way say that one film is better than the other, because the two films we're comparing, let's say we compare something like 12 Angry Men versus something like Showgirls, okay? So there's obviously, to us, it resonates that the two films are of a tremendously different quality. But we don't have to be cinema realists to argue that one is better than the other. We can acknowledge that there's nothing factual about our claim and not be humbled by that fact. And I'm going to say that's what it comes down to when it comes down to ethics.
I know, but they're just saying all value is projection. I'm saying yes, no, some values are projection. If you tell me chocolate ice cream is better than vanilla, that's simply a subjective projection of your programming, okay? Your conditioning, your maturation, your exploration of Earth, and that's the conclusion your brain made. But when we are talking about... Well, let me just finish the sentence. But when we are talking about the fact that there is a brain over there in pain, that is no longer chocolate ice cream. That is not vanilla ice cream. That is not strawberry ice cream. That is a specific thing that has no other definition. There is no definition besides it's in pain. It's bad that it's in pain. These are true statements about its condition that can't be refuted, that can't be overturned, that can't be logically denied.
But it doesn't entail that the subject is saying, I ought not to have experienced this.
It's not about the subject. It's not about the subject.
How can it not be about the subject?
Because I'm telling you, value isn't an opinion. It's an experience.
And that's another thing that I can recite, that you say all the time. I understand this position better than most people who would challenge you because I held this position for a number of years. So, again, if it's not the
I'm just saying, I can't make it clear, okay? I'm saying quite clearly, value is not something we project onto the world. It has nothing to do with our opinion. It is something generated by experience. If there's no sentience, there's no value. If there's no sentient creature having experience, there's no value. We make value like coins flying out of our experience. And they're either coins that are black or coins that are white. And that's all you do is you just add up how many white coins are created and how many black coins are created, and you figure out whether you're running a deficit or you're running a profit. But that's all there is.
Even by those metrics, which are, you can just say welfarism, for example. That's the short end of it, what you're describing.
Well, I'm not going to accept your derogatory categorization. That is not what it is, but I don't care. I don't care. Go ahead, finish whatever your slanted recontextualization of what I just said is, but I'm just saying, go ahead.
I did not coin the term. It's a subcategory of consequentialist ethics. I did not coin the term.
Who cares? I'm not accepting the term. I'm not accepting it, okay? I don't care who coined it. He's an asshole. I'm not accepting it.
Well, people at Stanford accept it.
I don't care. Can I say I don't care loud enough? I don't care if Albert Einstein said it, and I love Albert Einstein, but I just don't care.
If it's about the welfare itself, why would you say it's derogatory?
I'm saying the world.
About the welfare.
Well, again, we know the idea of welfare state gets into this idea of thriving and lots of other words that are mushy. Okay? And it's not about that because again, now we're talking about whether something believes itself to be having a good time or doesn't believe itself to be having a good time. And what I'm saying is the value is generated on a more visceral level and has more to do with the sensation-producing engine itself. But it doesn't matter. I'll accept your rhetoric for the purpose of your final statement on the subject. So go ahead, call it welfarism. I just don't like the word welfarism.
Fair enough. I won't use it. But you get the last word here, seeing as how you get one person enduring 99 units of hardship versus 100 enduring 100 units of hardship. You're saying it's all broken down to the quanta. Obviously, you're going to say the one person should endure the 99 units, and I'm taking your squared aspect into the consideration. Okay, now even if that one person is a person who would have preferred not to have been born in the first place, the moment you take views, preferences, ideologies of the subject out of the equation and just narrow it in on the raw sensorial states, you get an outcome like that can be said to have been better. And you can see why an anti-natalist would be extremely antagonistic towards that. You can see that, can't you?
No, I can't see I don't even know what you're saying. So yeah, sorry.
Okay, so 100. If it's about the totality sentient score, 100 individuals enduring 100 units of hardship among themselves when they are life-affirming optimists and go to their grave thinking it was all worth it, versus one person who regrets having been born enduring 99 units, so 1 unit less. If all we're looking at is the quanta, as you call it, then obviously you have your answer which one ought to happen. It's the one with the one
Well,
less.
don't bother putting in these equations. Obviously, there's this idea of fairness is important too. So don't even make it animals or something. Don't make it humans with attitudes.
Well, we agree.
As soon as you
don't
make it humans with attitudes, I'm saying that's when the bias happens, because human beings only care about survival when it's humans. They don't care about fun. They don't care about anything unless it's about a fucking human. It's their bigotry, their ego. It has nothing to do with value. It only has to do with their need.
I'm not going to make it about animals because we agree on the animals.
I know. Well, I'm just saying that you can't. If you're gonna use humans, then you're gonna get into humans' projections of value, and those projections, I'm saying, are all crap.
Obviously not all, seeing as how you project value.
No,
yourself.
I'm saying even my projections of value are crap. I'm saying the only values that are legitimate are the ones we discover, the ones we see in the world and recognize.
Or not recognize, seeing as how most of the suffering takes place in wildlife.
Well, I'm just saying, recognize in theory. Obviously, we can't recognize it all in strict accounting. We obviously cannot account for it all and put it in a book and press the equals sign button and say, give me the answer.
My takeaway point was that you should at least respect my antagonism towards the totality sentient score game once we create the specific types of scenarios where one person who regrets having been born has to pay the price just because more life-affirming optimists would have suffered had that person not paid the price. I'm not asking you to agree, but I'm saying understand my hostility towards that. My hostility as an anti-natalist to that.
Well, I don't even know what that is, but I don't think I'm agreeing with that, and I'm not saying... there's no way you can justify imposing harm. All right, so right there we're in big trouble. So as soon as the harm is imposed, you can't come up with a number like what, 6 million happy people at Disney World, and we're going to give cancer. We're going to give cancer to one little kid. Okay, so 6 million people are happy at Disney World, and you're going to torture one little kid. It's still too many.
It's not the equation. The equation is a harm exchange ultimatum. Again, one of the many ones which you already dealt with in previous sections. So you know I'm not comparing it to Disneyland.
But still, you're still comparing it to an imposition. You're still saying I have to have one to have the other. And I'm saying, no, you cannot have anything at that price. Well, as soon as you impose harm, as soon as you impose it, you're out of business.
Obviously, I'm not talking about the optimal outcome. I'm talking about an ultimatum, which you yourself would not argue for, but once you find yourself in that position, you got to pick the lesser of two evils.
That's right, and I will pick giving Adolf Hitler one broken leg over giving Gandhi 2 broken legs. So yes.
No, it's not about Adolf Hitler and Gandhi. It's about one person who regrets having been born versus the future reduction of life-affirming optimists who would never...
Again, you keep qualifying these people based on their projected values of how much they want to live, and again, it has imposition written all over it. So as long as it's an imposition equation, I'm saying foul.
Well, you answered in the last call, or at least in one of your videos.
Well, I know, and I'm trying to answer it for you right now. I'm trying to say that if you could prove that if I go out and rape a woman right now, I could prevent 30 other rapes, okay, I'll rape her.
Well, I guess it's about as good a time as any to move along. Let's see. Now, the last section, they can't handle the truth section. So the takeaway point there is that there's nothing wrong with being depressed, but there's also nothing wrong with not being depressed. Now, you're going to say that you've never said anything against that, but you have made statements in the past that people's understanding of evolution, or of gladiator wars, or of our bastard origin, as you claim it, is a depressing truth, and that there's something wrong with you if you acknowledge it without being humbled about it in some way, and even depressed. You've made those statements before. Now, in your
I
video
can't. It would
response-
be very hard for me to imagine how you could have a sensible psychology. Okay, maybe you don't have a psychology, so maybe you are Mr. Spock and you have eviscerated emotion from your body. I'm just saying, I don't know how you could be a loving human being, recognize a huge threat to the things you love, and then say, I'm perfectly happy with that. That's the part I'm not getting. So I'm just saying that, yeah, I'm suspect of a person who can know the truth and say it doesn't bother me.
Well, see, now there's a difference between frustration and depression. I can get frustrated by being powerless to stop the non-trivial harm in nature. I can be frustrated by that.
Right,
But
disturbed.
without
Let's just say
depression-
disturbed. Let's just say disturbed, okay? Disturbed is a good word, right?
Disturbed is a word I'll accept.
Okay, so yeah, I'll
But
accept
again,
that.
but
I'll
again,
accept
let's
that
say-
too. I'll accept that that yes, okay. You should never let emotion destroy you. You should never be crippled by it. That's just illogical in a way. So you should always try to have a barrier against that happening and stay in the fight. And even if you're in the worst of conditions, you sort of kind of got to do that. You got to man up somehow. So I'm not going to disagree with that. I mean, soldiers had to do it in World War II. They had to witness preposterous insanity, and they had to keep fighting.
But you would also agree with me that if I said, okay, we recognize the carnage, the meat grinder, as you call it, and we make some videos about it, and then we stop making videos, or we move away from that subject and we go exploring something else, and as time passes, out of sight, out of mind, because we've acknowledged it, we've done our bit, and it no longer even disturbs us because we've been there, done that. There's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. We've done all we can do. It should not have an everlasting, disturbing effect on our psychology, because it's not something that we have to keep rediscovering. Just like any other depressing truth, if you want to use the word depressing for it, right? You deal with it, you discover it, you move on.
Well, I'm not gonna. Yeah, I'm not arguing with that. I'm just saying, I personally haven't been able to move on since I was 7 years old. So, I mean, I basically came to this conclusion when I was pretty young that life doesn't look like something I would invent. I don't really find this very useful or purposeful. I don't like I said the words. I don't like the facts of life. People told me it's the facts of life, and I would say, oh, I don't like these facts. Where do I go buy some new ones? Because these suck. And I'm still there. So you can tell me that, yeah, you just move on. But I'm saying I don't think you do move on, because it doesn't move on. The blood is in your brain. You've been stained by it. I can't not be stained by all the cats I've seen die, or the people I've known and who have died badly. I don't just walk over that stuff. That stuff is inside of me all the time, wheeling around.
I understand, but there are some, dare I say, positive aspects to recognizing that the game is inherently crooked. Just like if you were to lose a game that is crooked, let's say a sporting event.
I'm just saying, I agree with you. Stay psychologically strong as long as it doesn't make you ignorant. Okay, if it turns you into a nihilist, then you've gone too far. Then you've allowed your psychology. Then you've used your psychology and said, because my psychology annihilated the truth, I can annihilate the truth. And that's wrong.
Can you not use nihilism as a pejorative? Because you are a couple of forms of nihilist, okay? You do subscribe to certain forms of nihilism. You certainly don't subscribe to moral nihilism, but for instance, you subscribe to therapeutic nihilism.
Well, I don't even know what therapeutic nihilism would be, but I'm saying, obviously what I'm talking about, nihilism by itself, the single world nihilism, we know what that means, and what that basically means is people who annihilate the idea that reality is anything other but than their projection, that they are allowed to make it up.
That's axiological nihilism.
Well, I'm just saying, and then we know that moral nihilism is right below that, and it basically says the same thing about value. That value doesn't exist, and that whatever you make up as value is as good as any other pile of shit.
But you would agree that existential nihilism is something worth getting behind, that there's no meaning to existence. So there's a couple of forms of nihilism where you just
Well, I know, but
use
that's
it-
not.
just
That's
use it.
like the nihilism of the. That's like saying it's a being nihilistic not to believe in God, and that is what. Oh, I annihilated fantasy characters. Yes, I did. I annihilated them as reality. That you don't give. You don't give that a title. You don't give titles to things that are ludicrous. And having to say I annihilated the theory of cartoon characters running the universe doesn't require a title. That should not have a title.
Okay, I don't exactly see how that plays into what I said a second ago. but
Existential
in any event-
existential nihilism is basically saying, okay, I don't accept God theories or unicorn theories or Donald Duck theories.
It says there's no meaning behind existence.
Well, I'm just saying, it's basically just saying there's no creation behind creation. You know.
Well, anyway, about the game being crooked, it can play to our psychological advantages in some respects. Because surely, like, if I were to allow people to have the option, like anyone who's ever competed, okay, taken part in some sort of competition, if I were going to tell them, you're going to lose, but your option is how you're going to lose. You can lose option A, where the game is crooked and the referee screws you over, or option B, you lose in a fair game to the better man. Right now, you know most people are going to be more comfortable with the idea of losing to the worst opponent, but being screwed over, as opposed to losing to the better man. So I think recognizing that there's something drastically flawed with the game itself has its psychological benefits, if you choose to dig deep enough and see them.
Well, I know, but then you're still making up reality here, okay? Because you don't have these options. In reality, it's going to be one choice. It's not going to be two choices. So
well, pretty much everything, every bad blow you're dealt, you can know that it's not your fault. It's just life throwing you the.
Well, again, those are all
straw.
projections of meaning that I don't think have any meaning. So I'm just saying that yes, I'm a nihilist in the sense that I think all those Stoic values are nice and pretty and whatever, but they mean absolutely nothing. And yes, I guess I'm saying it's irrelevant in the end. It just doesn't matter.
Well,
Okay.
You are, for the most part, if I can associate you with any form of nihilism, it would be therapeutic nihilism, because that's a contention that curing societies or humanity itself of its own inherent ills is impossible to do, and that is a reoccurring theme in your commentary. There's no point with curing them. The point is, I guess the only cure you would go for is the non-existent cure, which is not the way that.
Well, the easiest way to clean up a mess is not to make it. Yes, that's the straightest line. The straightest line to cleaning up the mess sufficiently is not to make it.
Yeah, but there is no cure with sentient beings continuing to exist. You would agree with that.
Well, I'm just saying there's no profit. There's no profit in it. Yes, that's right. There's no possible way to make a profit. All you can do is minimize losses. So, yes, we can minimize losses, but I'm just saying that's still losing.
So in that respect, therapeutic nihilism would fit your commentary.
Well, as long as this therapeutic nihilism, as you're using this word, doesn't include this idea of that you negate respect for the truth to gain some sort of therapy, as long as it's not a relevant truth, okay? As long as it's not a behaviorally significant perception that's being compromised. So yes, compromise all of it, as long as it doesn't compromise your behavior.
Well, it's a specific truth proposition in the first place. That there's no point to try to, I guess the Band-Aid solution. It would look upon everything as a Band-Aid that's not going to stick.
Exactly. Yeah, let's spend the money on cures. That's the way to go. Yeah, so that's the logical deduction, I think, points in that direction. But obviously we can't know all of those answers ahead of time, so it makes, saying it explicitly or say it absolutely doesn't make much sense in our circumstance because we don't have enough information. But I obviously would say that, yes, the tendency is cure it, don't treat it.
Okay, well, moving along to the golden rule, I'm just going to recap my overall point there. Because if do unto others is the precept, then you know that there's no getting around the fact that people who appreciate having been born and appreciate having been around their family throughout their whole lives are not going to be able to do what you said they would do in your video response to that section, which is you view their own lives as just part of this usury mechanism. You know that's not how they're going to see it. So the moment you legitimize the precept of the golden rule, you do give leeway for natalism to be the aughts mission statement.
Well, yeah, that's only if we concede that people are allowed to be illogical in not recognizing the full extent of what they're doing onto others. See, they think, like, say if I give my best friend something. Now, some people could say, oh, that was so generous of you, Gary. But no, what Gary's really doing is he's saying, if I can do this guy a favor now, okay, he'll give me, maybe he'll let me borrow his car, and, you know, I can go pick up his ex-girlfriend, and blah, 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 blah. You know, I might have a whole agenda that has nothing to do with being at all generous, and it really just has to do with my own blah, blah, blah. So I'm just saying, if somebody said to me, well, would you want somebody to do that onto you, Gary, where you just manipulated the fuck out of that guy? You gave him $10. It looked like you were doing him a favor, but really, you are fucking him over.
Well, even the Elephant Man did not hold his parents in contempt.
Well, that's his deal, okay? The Elephant Man, you know, I'm sure there were other Elephant Men who drowned in their own vomit on the street, and I'm sure they cursed the fuck out of their parents. So the fact that the one who got famous was kind of a nice guy, you know, okay, so what?
I'm just saying there's enough examples for us to be very wary of the golden rule, and it's probably best to avoid it altogether.
I just think in concept, okay, the very idea of recognizing the fact that if it was me, would I take these risks? I think that's a perfectly constructive thought experiment. I think that would be very healthy for people to realize that if I wasn't immune, if I wasn't going to be born in America, if I wasn't this, if I wasn't that, and that realization might make it clear to them that, whoa, I wouldn't want somebody fucking with me this way. I wouldn't want somebody dangling me in front of these sharks.
See my experience. See, I've actually spoken to people about these risk equations and about the worst possible outcome, and they are not the least bit humbled by it. They said they will take it any way they can get it. Of course, it might just be talk.
Exactly.
But we can't verify that. So I think it's best to just play it safe and to leave the golden rule the hell alone.
No, I think it will do. I think it can do corrosive actions. I'm just going based on maybe my own experience, but I'm just saying that the thing that built more character in me than anything else was doing this simple thing of saying, what if it were me? Okay, I mean, I looked at my sister. I had a twin sister, and I said, you know, and so I did the little thought experiments of just saying, what is she seeing? You know what I mean? Because, you know, we were opposite sex, so that sort of made it interesting. Because here we are twins, we have a lot of sameness, and yet we have this difference. And so I would start thinking about what would it be like to be, what was her perception of what's happening? What, you know, something that's happening to a third party, and she's having a reaction, and I'm having a reaction. I would actually think about what the difference is between our reactions. And I'm just saying, I thought that was incredibly therapeutic behavior in terms of humbling me and putting me in some kind of perspective where I was much more aware of the fact that everything I do has implications.
Yeah, but the problem is that's not the conventional thought process.
I concede your argument that, yes, the golden rule as people understand it is a piece of crap. Okay, so I agree, as is real gold is a piece of crap, you know, the way people have abused it. You know, its real value is being underappreciated. But yes, so I'll concede your point that for most people the golden rule may not be a very useful instrument until they understand how to use it right.
Okay. I guess before I turn it over to you, I'll just point something out. I was listening to Stickham, and something about my, you know, extensive blog post suggesting that there's something pathological about my willingness to criticize overbearingly. So let me just point out that I haven't written a single blog post. I haven't written anything since March, right? So if we compare my output to the average blogger's output per year, even though I wrote this extensive blog post, I still contribute far less. Like, even if you just go letter by letter, I still contribute far less to my blog on a yearly basis compared to 90% of bloggers, okay? So what I simply like to do is I don't like to do separate, because you can really count this as 23 separate blog posts posted at once. And now, had they been posted separately, nobody would be talking this pathology talk.
Well, okay? I know, but they're just doing.
One more thing. I work on these things during slow periods of my work, and that's also when I listen to a lot of your MP3s, and so I have time here and there. It doesn't necessarily take up all my time. So I just want to put that out there because somebody said something about even using different, even like using synonyms for supposedly. Yeah, I'm not going to write supposedly 300 million times. If I can use a synonym, I'm going to use it, regardless of whether it sounds fancy or not. So I don't go out of my way to sound fancy. I just don't like using the same word over and over and over. And one of the guys even said that somehow he applied this stupid Freudian analysis that somehow it suggests low self-esteem or something. No, it's simply I just like some variety in the text. When the text is really long, I like to sparkle it up, so to speak.
You're right. I know. Well, look, we're all subject to these people impugning our motives and our integrity and our psychology and all that stuff. So I'll concede your argument in defense of yes, what has on the face of it, what it looks like on the face of it, like some kind of Unabomber, kind of insane minutia. But, I appreciate it, actually, and I appreciate you going to the trouble and using me as an example, so I don't find that all negative. I also don't appreciate the fact that you don't really give me any respect. I mean, compared to every other friggin' philosopher on YouTube, who's come up with more original ideas? Who has challenged more status quo stupid ideas? Who's come up with more good logical theory about how to approach certain arguments? I mean, fuck, I deserve a little bit of credit.
Well, I'm not calling you your majesty.
I'm not asking you to, but I'm just saying you're calling me quite the opposite in the substance of this blog, and that's why I find it a little bit obnoxious. But that's just like, obviously, who wants to be bludgeoned over and over again with accusations of duplicity and hypocrisy?
Well, if there is any sort of contempt there, it is because during the last squabble, you took away my analysis and you said flippantly in a video that I want to allow individuals to impose smallpox on societies, simply because I said that they should be allowed to impose smallpox on themselves in an isolated setting. So you never apologized for that. And if anything was the driving force behind the contempt, it sure as hell wasn't a 4-year fucking old video on a subject that I don't even think about. It was the fact that you, 8 months ago at this point, I guess, said that I want to impose smallpox on societies. So please cut the bullshit about the 4-year-old underlying motives. Cut that shit out.
Well, like I said, it wasn't I didn't bring that up as the entire motive, but whatever. It's okay. Fine. I'm just saying that this kind of talk is not, you can't tell people not to do it because it is on its face. It says something about obviously how you spend your time and what arguments you think are worth making. And so again, it is, in my opinion, it's really pointed. So yeah, some of that anger, or not anger, has to be accounted for. And then my only criticism on the word thing, you sort of asked for it. Like I said, I would argue that as soon as you use a word that only 1% of people are going to know what the definition of it is, that's a mistake. So anytime you're writing something and you use a 1% word, that's a mistake.
I don't think ostensibly, instead of supposedly, is going to be understood by 1% of the population. And I am not somebody who hangs around in academic circles. So I don't have these high standards the way some other people on this site do. So if I'm telling you...
Well, that's not the only word I would have criticized, but I'm sure I could find a few words in there that were not words that would be a 10% word or a 30% word, or even a 50% word. They were 1% words. Well, you're right. I'm just saying I personally just don't go for that crap. That's all. I'm just saying I don't go for the crap of using a word that's just a stumbling block to communication.
Well, I don't know. I think what's a stumbling block is repeatedly using the same word over and over again when there are perfectly good synonyms that can apply?
Well, contextually, yes, sometimes you can be rescued by these synonyms, but I'm just saying that sometimes it's very dangerous to use a word that isn't understood. So that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I said it, and that's what I said. So, yeah, I just don't like it.
Okay, well, before I turn it over to you, I was serious about the donations, though. I'm willing to donate. I know other people who will be willing to donate and make certain requests of you. For example, do you still have Tranquil blocked?
Well, I unblocked everybody just a while back, but I might have reblocked some people, but I don't think he's blocked on.
Okay. Well, can you unblock Tranquil, because he's willing to donate to a lot of animal shelters that he knows and has worked with firsthand if you follow through with some of his requests about certain things that might only be demeaning to your bullshit ego, which you identify as bullshit ego, so it shouldn't matter anyway.
Well, again, I get to choose. As long as I get to choose where the money's getting donated, and I have to find a place to donate. Because I already had this argument with Tranquil. I don't even like what their animal shelter. I mean, they're taking feral cats and forcing them to become civilized, and I find that horribly cruel.
That's not all they do, though. You know, they do relieve real, non-trivial suffering. That might not be all.
Well, I'm just saying. I'm just saying, but they impose and off. They do. They like to do. They like to do surgeries. They like to cut the nuts off of these animals. They like to do all that shit because that's their living. And I'm just saying, some of that I don't go for that crap.
Well, what if it's just a subsidy of an abortion clinic or something?
Yeah, okay. I'm just saying there's some things I'm all for. So yeah, killing babies. Yeah, okay. Can't find anything wrong with that. Okay, yeah, so that's all win.
Zygotes, and all
yeah,
that stuff.
Yeah, whatever they are, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, little human squigglies.
Well, even I'll give some leeway to non-consenting parties, and technically, that is what a baby is. But I still wouldn't go so far as to actually do it, but I can understand not criticizing it. But I wouldn't do it. Like, I could never do it. So that's my commentary for that. So I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, this is all about, a couple of fundamental problems we're having in terms of perceiving the world. So I'm just saying that this value thing is a reality thing is important, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean,
even if I agreed, then I would still take issue with total versus average well-being and the reduction manner we can do that in. So my scaling would still be different, even if I were still a steadfast moral realist. So it doesn't just come down to
I don't know how you could possibly do that if you saw it the way I see it. Like if I gave you the analogy that it was creating an actual substance that you could measure with instruments.
Well, in the sense that Randians are moral realists, but they can disagree with you. In that same sense, I would disagree. It would just not be that preposterous of a disagreement.
Well, I'm just saying that it still wouldn't go to the logical core that I'm expressing, is that obviously the value is not negotiable. It's not something we get to make up. That we're kind of obliged, once we've identified the positive and the negative, to understand that that's exactly what and once we've identified the negative and the absence of negative.
And that's why you should just use the word disvalue.
Well, I know, but disvalue. I mean, again, I'm not. Maybe I can get comfortable with it. Okay, I'm just saying. But it's like the ephilism argument you made. If I start just filling my commentary full of words that people have no understanding of and don't know what they mean, then where am I going to go?
Well, I said ephilism can be interchangeable with unconditional extinctionism. So why not just say unconditional extinctionism? Most people behave like unconditional extinctionists because they...
I know, but extinction is in itself a derogatory description of preventivism, right? Because the goal isn't to make things extinct. The goal is to make them not exist by procreation, by force. So it's non-impositionalism. It's a lot of other things, but I don't even think of it in terms of extinction. I think of it as prevention.
But the moment you say most people behave like antinatalists because they reproduce at a rate that's insufficient to maintain human existence, you are assuming that every antinatalist's goal is total extinction. Whereas like with me, like I pointed out with the analogy to arranged marriage, on consequential grounds, if there is ideological compatibility and if the minor does not regret having been born from cradle to grave, then I'm not going to make a consequentialist argument against
I know,
that.
but that argument was used for a specific purpose. So it's like me saying, like in an Arab culture where they don't drink, it's like me saying they're already behaving like non-drunk drivers. Right? I mean, obviously, because they don't drink. Okay, so they can't possibly drink and drive if they don't drink. So, but I'm just saying for the purpose of, well, I already explained it, but I mean, to me, the important value of that point is that they don't have to sacrifice anything. They've already accomplished antinatalism. They've already accomplished the goal. They sacrifice absolutely nothing personally in their life, and the only thing that has to change is they have to say, poor people suck, and we should stop them from having too many kids. There. That's all they have to do. They don't have to give up anything else. They don't have to pay another tax. They don't have to do another. They don't have to lift one more finger. All they have to do is say, poor people suck.
Okay, but you read my criticism of parenthood, and you honestly can tell me that you can read that criticism and still come away thinking that that's second fiddle reasoning behind why one should reject natalism, and that the main rejection of natalism should simply be prevent harm in this context of equal opportunity indexing of harm. Well, see, for me, it all comes down to, number one, rejection of parenthood, because parenthood is just intrinsically a catch-22 endeavor in the sense that you cannot know what your minor will go on to view as unwise versus wise behavior until you are done shaping him, right? So in a lot of respects, I use the career example, right? There's a lot of career-oriented parents who micromanage the minor's activities from dusk to dawn, especially in Eastern cultures, so to shape the minor to be this, career-minded person and be successful. But, like I use the examples with my peers, right? They're fully grown adults now, and they were told, you'll thank me for this when you're older, or they were told, it's my way or the highway, or they were told, as long as you live under my roof, you'll do as I say. But the most prevalent of the statements was, you'll thank me for this when you're older. And I was there to see it firsthand. And I told them back then, I'm like, no, I guarantee you, your mind will not change as you age. And sure enough, I was right. So there's a lot of instances of parents assuming that they've got this correct formula on how a human being should be, and that has to be the formula that they apply. And
well, I know, but there's no point in talking about that in the sense that, in my opinion, just because it's such a mixed bag. I mean, it's, I mean, we could go based on statistics. I mean, spanking versus no spanking, allowance, no allowance. What age should the kid be before you allow them to make decisions about, extra going to work? What age should? I mean, this. You could end up writing volumes and volumes and volumes of books analyzing statistical outcomes and trying to figure out what's the best way to manufacture yourself a human being. But we've seen it work, right? We've seen the Tiger Woodses of the world, so it obviously does work sometimes to manufacture, but obviously there's a price to pay for that because a lot of times it fails.
Yeah, and just the initiation of that. It's not so much about the fact that minor is born, minor will suffer, minor ought not have suffered, even as an adult. It's more about the fact that the undertaking of parenthood, natalism itself, all these building blocks of the natalist philosophy, familialism plays into that. Okay, it is obscenely arrogant to think that
right. Well, that's that. We could agree right there. It's obscenely arrogant to think you can play God, because you can't. You can't play God. You can't create this thing. This thing is going to be created by forces outside of your control. You will not be able to control the experiment, and at any time it can melt the fuck down, and you won't have any recourse. You won't have any solution to that meltdown.
I just think when you put a lot of emphasis on just the suffering itself, it does you a disservice, as opposed to these other control freak tendencies of parenthood, which might work, but even the last progressive parenthood formula can fail. And it's always going to be too late to tell when it fails, because you don't know what a minor will go on to conclude once the minor turns into an adult. So I think that's the better angle to work this issue from than the pure mantra of negative utilitarianism.
Yeah, well, I disagree, obviously, but whatever, it's okay. I mean, you can have your angle. I'm just saying the arrogance of the parents is, to me, an obvious fact, and the lack of controllability of the experiment is an obviously fact. But I mean, I'm still going to argue that the more important fact is that the experiment does not need to take place, and your only potential is to make less of a mess. You have no potential not to make some kind of mess.
Okay, it's been going on for about 2 hours. I don't know if you even stopped recording once we failed the call.
No, I'm yeah. This one camera says way more memory than I got on the camera, so hopefully it's okay. But I got the first 40 minutes good. I got the other on an MP3 probably. I mean, I covered my bases a little bit, but I'll end this.
Unfortunately, my image never came up, but I did hold my hand up while you were talking for the most part. So
yeah, well, good. So at least you got some exercise.
You talked 70% of the time.
Yeah, blah 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 blah.
Thinking that